Can the witness please state her name for the record?
Hillary Rodham Clinton.
William Jefferson Clinton.
Is there any reason you were unable to provide truthful testimony in today's interview?
No.
I don't believe so.
What we're trying to get at is some context for the public on whether you remember this photo. So do you recall the details of this photo, or recall the photo being taken?
No, I don't think I ever knew the photo was taken.
Okay, and for those who can't see it, it's a photo of you in a hot tub. There's a person next to you here. Do you remember where it was taken? Where was it taken?
I'm almost sure that this taken, I think there's an adjacent photograph, which you probably have. But anyway, this picture was taken, we flew one night on a trip to Asia, the last very long leg.
You said we, is it, who is that including?
Well, my TIL team that was working
Thank you.
on the AIDS issue, and Mr. Epstein was there, and
Okay.
Miss Maxwell. But anyway, we got to the end of the flight was Brunei. It's a tiny place, but a very wealthy one. And the Sultan of Brunei was a man that I had gotten to know well in my 8 years as president. He said he wanted to help me with my AIDS initiative, and he invited me to stay there. And he said, I want you to stay at this hotel, and I hope you'll use the pool. So I did, and then I got out and went to bed, exhausted.
And so were there other people in that pool or hot tub with you as well?
I don't think there's anybody in the hot tub. I didn't forgotten that there was anybody in the hot tub, but it was big, but it was about.
There's a girl over here. Is there someone?
Yeah, I don't know who that is.
But he's also asking in the pool area were there other
Yes,
individuals?
I don't know who that is.
Okay, so you don't know?
No, and then there were other people in the pool.
Okay, so do you remember were they under 18? Would you
No.
know? No. Okay. And was this in public?
No, it was a hotel room.
And then I have to ask this, did you engage in any sexual activity
No.
with this person?
My question, Mr. President, were you ever aware or engaged in any of these sexual orgies?
Are these on the island where he's testified that he's
No,
not
ma'am,
been on the
I
island?
was never on the island.
Were you ever on any island in the Virgin Islands?
To travel for a trip with his wife, which is on the public record? I'm
With
sorry,
Jeffrey
what's your
Epstein?
question?
No,
You were never in the Virgin Islands
in the Virgin Islands with Jeffrey Epstein, no.
Mr. President, there's been new information that has come out regarding the autopsy of Mr. Epstein. I would just like to ask you personally and directly, do you believe that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself?
Are you asking him to speculate on how Mr. Epstein died?
I'm asking what the president thinks of.
So you're asking his opinion?
Mr. President, was your friend Jeffrey Epstein
Are you
suicidal?
classifying him as a friend who he has testified that he was
has called him
friendly?
a friend in a letter.
He said he was friendly, but not, you've asked for his
Mr.
testimony here.
President, do you believe that Jeffrey Epstein was suicidal?
Do you know?
Was he ever
She's asking to the
suicidal?
best of your
I
understanding.
don't know. I only know what the medical finding was. I think maybe
That's it.
he finally got caught, and I don't know. I've accepted it in my own mind. I don't know what happened,
Mr. President, what did you accept? That he killed himself or that he did not?
but he did, but I don't know.
Yes, sir. Thank you,
Neither do
Mr.
you.
President.
We don't, none of us know. We weren't there.
Mr. President, it's been an honor. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm here today basically for two reasons. First of all, I love my country and the Constitution, and I believe America was built on the idea that no one is above the law, especially presidents, and that we should all live by the same set of rules shaped by the Constitution. Democracy requires every person to play their part, and I hope that by being here today, we can bring ourselves a little further away from the brink and back to being a country where we can disagree civilly and search for the truth and justice, and that outweighs the partisan urge for spectacle and point scoring. I will do my part, and I hope you'll do yours. The second reason I'm here is that the girls and women whose lives Jeffrey Epstein destroyed deserve not just justice, but healing. They've been waiting too long for both. Through my brief acquaintance with Jeffrey Epstein, though it ended years before his crimes came to light, and though I never witnessed during our limited interactions any indication of what was going on, I'm here to offer what little I know so I can do my part to prevent something like this from happening again. I have to just say one personal thing. Since Hillary came in yesterday, she had nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. Nothing. There's a picture of us both shaking hands with him in a photo line in 1993 at a fundraiser for the White House Historical Association. I don't know how it is under President Trump, but when I was there, it was about the most non-political operation you can imagine. There were people who loved the White House, who were interested in it, would give a little money every year to do things that needed doing around the house. And nothing nearly as extravagant as the ballroom or any of that, just things that had to be done. And neither she nor I remembered shaking his hand all those years ago. So I don't think that was right. On the other hand, I do think you should be talking to me. I think you should have called me. I did take those plane trips with him, and you have a right to ask those questions. So I'm glad to be here, and I understand what the oath is. I have to be honest with you. You know, I'll be 80 years old if I live to my next birthday. I don't remember everything that happened 24 years ago, but I do remember some things, and I will tell you what I remember as best I can. We, each of us, owe the victims nothing less than the truth and accuracy. We owe that to the American people.
Can you briefly describe the nature and extent of your relationship with Mr. Epstein?
Sometime after I left the White House, either in late 2001 or early-ish in 2002, I received a call from Larry Summers, who had been on my economic team and was later Secretary of Treasury, and was then president of Harvard. He was calling because a man named Jeffrey Epstein, who had made a substantial commitment of several $1 million, I think it was 10, to brain research, and that he was a information hungry person, and he wanted to spend some time talking to me about economics and politics. And he said, he's got this massive airplane, and he said he would take you, your staff, your Secret Service detail, anybody else you wanted to bring on the trips that he knew I was planning to set up a global network to provide life-saving AIDS medicine to as many people as possible, as quickly as possible.
Mr. President, when did your relationship with Mr. Epstein end?
Well, I believe I took my last flight in 2003. Later, I became aware of some involvement he had in the first Clinton Global Initiative, but it was much later.
Why did your relationship with Mr. Epstein end?
Well, after a year or two, we really picked up a head of steam with this AIDS program, and a lot of other people whom I knew better and who really cared about the work came forward and offered to help us provide transportation. And I thought Mr. Epstein was an interesting man, but I didn't think he was really interested in what I was doing. That is, he asked all these questions. He did ask about economics and politics, as he said he would. He never asked me anything untoward. It's just that I thought I had done what I promised to do, and he had done what he promised to do. And I thought I'd always, over the years, with these donors, tried not to overstay my welcome. I thought that we'd done enough, and then it's time to start working with other people.
When did you first learn of Jeffrey Epstein's crimes?
I think in 2008, when he was prosecutors. There's nothing that I saw when I was around him that made me realize he was trafficking women.
Let's talk about Ghislaine Maxwell. When did you first meet Ghislaine Maxwell?
I believe I first met her with him when she was working with him.
And what did you understand Miss Maxwell and what did you understand her relationship to be with Mr. Epstein?
I thought she was sort of his chief of staff or administrator.
And you said that you first met Miss Maxwell with Mr. Epstein. Is that after you were president?
Yeah, I don't believe I met her when I was president. I could have. I met a lot of people, I don't remember, but I definitely remember meeting her on that first flight.
Mr. President, for the record, have you ever been contacted by any law enforcement agency concerning Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell?
As far as I know, no. That is, as far as I remember. Back in 2008, I sort of thought somebody might ask me something. Because I was glad this had come out since it had happened. But I don't believe anybody ever did.
You mentioned that you thought someone would want to ask you something. Can you elaborate on what that means?
Just because he let me use this airplane.
Mr. President, are you aware of any efforts by anyone, including an attorney, process server, investigator, or any other person to contact you regarding any civil lawsuit, claim, or litigation involving Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell?
Not that I recall.
Did Jeffrey Epstein ever inform or represent to you that he was working with any intelligence service of any nation, including the United States?
No.
Did Ghislaine Maxwell ever inform or represent to you that she was working with any intelligence service of any nation, including the United States?
No.
And during your relationship, did you ever suspect Epstein or Maxwell of being affiliated with any intelligence agency?
I did not.
My next question for you is, have you ever had contact with an individual by the name of Shantae Davies?
I believe Shantae that's a distinctive name, and so I think that was the name of one of his flight attendants.
Okay. She's been described on being on a 2002 Africa trip and providing massages. Was she or any other young female on that trip underage at that time?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Did you ever receive a massage or have physical contact from her or anyone else on that trip?
You've seen the pictures. There was one time when I was sitting up and I got a back rub, and I think Shantae did it, but I'm not sure.
Okay. Did you ever visit Epstein's Little St. James Island?
No.
We have Virginia Guffrey, who has testified seeing you on the island with two young girls. Did this occur at all? Okay. Why do you think she would have made that claim?
Objection, speculation. He can't possibly.
Have you ever met her or any other Epstein associated underage girl?
Not to my knowledge.
This is a letter from a book of letters, which
Yeah, it's his 50th birthday.
Jeffrey Epstein's 50th birthday. For the record, does this appear to be your handwriting and
It
signature?
is.
And why did you write this letter?
Why did I? Because I was requested to contribute a nice letter for his birthday book.
And who asked you to write the letter?
I don't remember.
Would Miss Maxwell have
I
asked you?
don't know. I think someone on my staff asked me. What did I mean? Anybody who's lived 50 years and done anything has made mistakes as well as progress and done things.
But for the record, you weren't referring to errors in judgment that Mr. Epstein had related to his inappropriate activities involving you?
Absolutely not. I knew nothing about that.
Let me be as clear as I can. I do not. As I stated in my sworn declaration on January 13th, I had no idea about their criminal activities. I do not recall ever encountering Mr. Epstein. I never flew on his plane or visited his island, homes, or offices. I have nothing to add to that. A committee run by elected officials with a commitment to transparency would ensure the full release of all the files. It would ensure that the lawful redactions of those files protected the victims and survivors, not powerful men and political allies. It would get to the bottom of reports that DOJ withheld FBI interviews in which a survivor accuses President Trump of crimes. It would subpoena anyone who asked on which night there would be the wildest party on Epstein's Island. It would demand testimony from prosecutors from Florida, New York, and the Department of Justice about why they gave Epstein a sweetheart deal and chose not to pursue others who may have been implicated in his crimes. But that's not happening. Instead, you have compelled me to testify, fully aware that I have no knowledge that would assist your investigation in order to distract from President Trump's actions and to cover them up despite legitimate calls for answers. If this committee is serious about learning the truth about Epstein's trafficking crimes, it would not rely on press gaggles to get answers from our current president on his involvement. It would ask him directly under oath about the tens of thousands of times he shows up in the Epstein files. If the majority was serious, it would not waste time on fishing expeditions. There is too much to be done. This institutional failure is designed to protect one political party and one public official, rather than to seek truth and justice for the victims and survivors, as well as inform the public who want to get to the bottom of this matter. My heart breaks for the survivors, and I am furious on their behalf.
Excuse me, can I interrupt?
I have
There
another.
are photos that are being released of the secretary as she is testifying from inside this room. Can you please advise me as to whether or not that's permissible and consistent with the rules, particularly given that we have asked for a public hearing? If there are photos that are being released of the secretary as she is testifying, can you please explain how that
I'm
can
done with
occur?
this. If you guys are doing that, I am done. You can hold me in contempt from now until the cows come home. This is just typical behavior.
We will go off the record.
Oh, for heaven's
So I would like
sake.
to understand how that's permissible.
Before the hearing was,
It doesn't
Excuse me.
matter. We all are abiding by the same rules.
I will take that down.
Yeah,
So I
well,
would like to take a break at this moment.
yeah,
and I'd like to have
I'm
a
done
conversation.
for now.
On December 19th, 1998, President Clinton was impeached on charges of perjury and obstruction of justice, which directly related to his extramarital affair with Monica Lewinsky. Is that correct?
Yes.
And your husband was impeached for perjury related to sexual behavior, correct?
I didn't understand what you said.
Your husband was impeached for perjury related to sexual behavior, his sexual behavior.
He was impeached for several reasons, and then was acquitted in the Senate.
And your husband flew on Jeffrey Epstein's plane 17 to 26 times, correct?
He made several trips with different legs on the trip, as I recall.
But he flew on Jeffrey Epstein's plane
Yes, he
17 to
did.
26 times?
Mhm.
Were you aware that Secret Service was dropped on some of those flights?
That is not my understanding.
Multiple credible accusers, including Juanita Broderick, who alleged rape against your husband. Your husband was disbarred in Arkansas, lost his law license before the Supreme Court, flew on Epstein's plane dozens of times, visited Epstein's Island.
That is not true. That is absolutely untrue.
Well, there's documentation in the DOJ files. I'm not sure you're aware, your attorneys have told you, but Jeffrey Epstein told one of the victims to lie to investigators, to lie that Bill Clinton was ever on Epstein Island. I can provide that document to you.
We would like that document, please.
Okay.
Yeah, counsel,
By your standard of pattern of behavior, according to documents released by the Department of Justice, your husband appears in photos in swimming pools, hot tubs, aboard Jeffrey Epstein's private plane with unidentified young women. We came here today and told this committee that a pattern of behavior demands accountability, correct?
I said that I believe the committee should call anyone who had a substantial pattern and practice of contact with Jeffrey Epstein and his crimes before they came to light.
Does that include your husband?
And after they came to light. You're going to have a chance to question him tomorrow.
So I'll ask you again, by the standard you just set, in your own words just now, does this standard apply equally to your husband or only President Trump?
I have said that my husband has been subpoenaed. He will appear. He will answer your questions to the best of his ability, but there is no evidence whatsoever of any connection with Jeffrey Epstein's crimes, and I think that that will be obviously apparent in the questioning.
What makes you so sure of that then? I mean, he's photographed with.
Objection
No,
is to speculate on something that's not
Yeah,
evidence.
it is so speculative. I mean, swimming in a pool, sitting in a hot tub, there are millions of people who do that without any improper behavior or certainly committing any crimes.
Do you think most of the men are like your husband that did anything wrong by were they being surrounded by young women giving them massages on Jeffrey's private estate or private plane? Are they all innocent then?
You know, you are making assumptions in your questions that have not been proven and I don't believe are provable.
Okay, why did you wait 6 months to have this hearing today or have this testimony?
You know, I've answered that. I thought that given the way that other witnesses who were subpoenaed at the same time were being treated, that there was an unfair treatment of both my husband and myself. And I thought that, especially from my perspective, I had very little, if any, information to provide you, and that I could have done it in a sworn statement, and you could have moved on to depose somebody else who might have more information that would be beneficial to
Concern you at
for
all
the
that Ghislaine
testimony.
Maxwell was heavily involved with people you knew and were close to?
I knew people that I knew her. Yes, that's true.
And you just shrugged, you didn't want to look into it or
You know,
have any
nobody,
question
you know,
about it?
until her crimes were revealed and she was indicted and tried and convicted, I don't think people knew very much about at all
And
what
then
she
how do
was
you know
doing.
Howard Lutnick?
I know Howard Lutnick because when I was senator on 9/11, the firm he headed, Cantor Fitzgerald, suffered the greatest loss of life. As I recall, something like 650 of his employees were murdered by terrorists that day. Howard Lutnick missed being a victim because he was delayed dropping
know
his
that. I
child
asked him.
off to
You asked
kindergarten.
him.
You asked the question. I'm going to answer your question.
Now you're gonna yell
This
at
was
me?
what I spent
You're
my
going to yell at
time
me.
doing.
I'm a
I
survivor
spent
trying to look out for other
well,
survivors trying to.
and I was taking care of
Waited
the
6
people
months
who
to
lost
get here today.
3,000
6 months,
lives
and now you're being
at World
defiant
Trade
and
Center.
indignant today.
You asked me
I have
about
met
Howard
with Epstein
Lutnick.
survivors. I'm a survivor myself. You have emails. You've denied that Jeffrey Epstein, that you tried to get Jeffrey Epstein to give money to you.
I did
but
not.
Howard Lutnick was
If you
using
have an
the money.
email with me asking Jeffrey
I
Epstein
have
for
an
money,
email from Howard Lutnick sending it to
what's
Jeffrey
the question?
Epstein and his
What's the-
people to
I
raise
don't-
money
I
for
don't
you
know about-
for an event, an intimate event for you at his offices
Well,
at Cantor Fitzgerald. You're going to sit
if
here
you-
today
if you would let me finish.
obfuscate and say to this committee, you didn't try to get money from Jeffrey
I didn't.
Epstein when
I
there was an
didn't.
intimate event in an email that Howard Lutnick emailed to Epstein's people and Epstein to get him to come to your intimate event at Cantor Fitzgerald, a very small event. And so I'm not going to put, you want to yell at me, that's fine, but I'll yell right back.
Well,
okay? I am looking out for
it's
survivors.
very-
I'm doing
look-
the job that you would not do and refuse to do as Secretary of State. Thank you, and I yield back to
no,
Congresswoman.
I'm going to finish answering the question, which I have a right to do. I am very sympathetic to your personal situation. I have read about it. I have seen you testify or speak on the floor about it. And I very much sympathize with not only what you went through, but appreciate your effort to stand up for survivors. I was a senator representing the people who were murdered on 9/11. Nobody lost more people than Howard Lutnick. You can say whatever you want. You can call him and have him appear before the committee. But I knew him as the man who lost the employees that he knew intimately, including his brother.
And he was a
So
good
I
friend between
work-
you and
Let
Jeffrey
her finish
Epstein
her
raising
answer,
money
please.
for you.
Let her finish her
You
answer.
know what? If you don't want to hear what emotionally affected me, that's fine. But that's why I know Howard Lutnick. I went to the memorial service every 9/11 after the formal service was
I
held.
see what you're
with
doing here.
all-
And you're
with
obfuscating
all
from the
of his
questions. He was the
people, the
go-between
families.
between you and Jeffrey Epstein raising money for your
Well,
campaign.
you know, Howard Lutnick and I did work
Thank you. I will
together
now yield
because
to
we had a
Congresswoman
lot of
Luna.
victims
Thank you.
to take care of, and we worked together to rebuild downtown Manhattan. That is how I know Howard Lutnick.
Are you aware of any files that were on Anthony Weiner's laptop in a folder that was titled insurance, life insurance?
This is way outside the scope.
ruling.
This is way
within the
outside the
scope?
scope.
This,
Is this within the scope, Mr.
if
Chairman?
the chairman rules that it's not within the scope, I
Mr.
have other
Chairman, based on
questions.
what you said in the public hearing, is this within the scope?
We can go off the record for a moment. to
Mr.
confirm
Chairman, is this within the
We'll
scope?
go off the
We'll go off the record.
You know, I also find it very interesting because I went back and looked at the transcripts of all of your other depositions, and none of the Republicans asked a single question to any witness about Jeffrey Epstein, or any question that would help provide answers for his victims to any of the people you deposed. In fact, the only questions that were asked by the chairman to Attorney General Barr. And what were they about? They weren't about Jeffrey Epstein. They weren't about Ghislaine Maxwell. They weren't about victims and survivors. They were, General Barr, I may jump in for a couple of questions. Were you aware of the involvement of Hillary Clinton and the Clinton campaign in the Russian collusion investigation involving President Trump?
A deposition of Ms. Clinton.
Well, I'm just saying, you have kept me here for hours asking the same questions over and over again. I've given the same answers over and over
Secretary,
again.
we
Not
will-
a single
If
Republican
you give us
at
just a
any
moment,
of your
but-
depositions has asked a question about Epstein or Maxwell. And it does seem to me that if the members were truly interested in getting to the truth,
Madam Secretary,
you would have
I
asked
think you have enough.
Barr,
We are very
Acosta,
close to
Wexner, you
finishing.
didn't even show up
Madam
at.
Secretary, I believe we are very close to finishing.